I see the email. Yeah. All this. So they can use the headset from the supervisor desk and then yeah, that surprised me.
Is that conference room?
I'll tell you, there's conference, I don't know, I don't know if the original one, pretty,
But yeah, I don't know the numbers either, but yeah.
Board members would just say their name and where they are located in Ypsilanti Township. Gloria Peterson.
Gloria Peterson, Ypsilanti Township, at my home.
Okay. Clerk Rowe, Heather Rowe, Jero Rowe. I can't hear you.
Myself. Ypsilanti Township here.
Trustees Treasurer Eldridge.
Civic Center, Ypsi Township.
Trustee Swanson.
Debbie Swanson, present virtually in Ypsilanti Township.
And Trustee Jimmy Wilson Jr. We need your face. Hey.
Jimmy Wilson, Ypsilanti Township.
All right. Okay. Our work session is just reviewing the agenda. So we have the minutes of the work session, regular meeting, and statements and checks. There's a few minor changes and send them to Heather. Any questions or comments? General legal update, Mr. Winters?
No general legal update per se, beyond the fact that we continue to have a lot of meetings that have carried over into 2021 on different issues, and I'm still trying to send out as many letters to the board, especially the new members, with background information. So the goal being that within a few months they'll have the same type of contacts, or nearly the same contacts as many of you that have been there for a number of years. So I'm just going to continue to update the board on things that come our way. There's a lot of different buckets, so to speak, that we're having to, different, I guess, balls to juggle, it seems like. But I think right now you're getting all the information in a pretty timely manner. So unless there's specific questions, I don't want to just repeat issues that have already been dealt with in the letters themselves, but glad to any specific issue that might be on your mind.
Nope. All right. Thank you, Mr. Winters. And under old business, we have the request to approve the proposal for professional services from CNC Consulting for the creation of a website redesign proposal. And this was tabled just so that we could get an actual amount and not to exceed amount. And there is a memorandum, that updated memorandum from Travis, and it's capped at 120 hours and it's funded, and the amount is $16,200. So does anyone have any questions about this contract? Nope. All right. The next one is new business, which is selling the 3 lots to Mr. Scott Chatfield that are on Broadmoor, Lakewood, and 2 on Lakewood Avenue. Brian from assessing was dealing with this and did the appraisal. Mr. Winters has been working with the prospective purchaser on this. It's a great reuse of property that had become a dumping ground by the railroad tracks on Michigan Avenue. So, Mr. Winters, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. There's a resolution that specifically gives the parcel numbers and the amount.
Well, I would add a few comments, only because of the big picture here. These properties, like tonight, they come to the township at the end of the year when the township offices are closed. And they come to us by default. In other words, the county treasurer goes through a foreclosure process, and on vacant parcels such as these that no one has submitted a bid at all, they end up just being given like a hot potato to the township, unless the township later on does not want these properties. And we've struggled for a long time because these come to the township again during the last week of the year. In this case, these properties came to us back in late December 28th of 2011. And a lot of times we don't really become aware of this until January or maybe even February or March of the following year. I say that because we have a lot of these type of parcels scattered around the township. These 3 parcels alone, the township expended $7,000 on just cleaning up. You saw the pictures, the used tires, the boat. There was all kinds of construction materials. And I think probably in one of my letters back when this was going on, I did recommend to the township that we identify all these type of vacant parcels and also try to keep a better eye on these parcels that constitute a dumping ground, because this was a very expensive one, number one. Number two, it's hard for me to believe that neighbors or people living nearby are not aware when someone is dumping into their vacant lots. And number three, I kind of maybe I was being too optimistic by suggesting that maybe we put up signs that this area is under surveillance, or even have some kind of opportunity to have some of those very inexpensive videos installed in areas that might be a hot spot, because it's not right for these properties to be, in some ways just come to the township by default, and then we're left with a mess of having to clean these up. Now, in this case, these 3 parcels will end up being combined with the other parcels on the aerial map that you have, and will be one that will end up being repurposed into a development of 2 drive-in restaurants and a couple of self-storage units. So this does become a good use of these vacant parcels. But we have, at one time, we had hundreds, dozens of these anyways, I know, scattered all around the township. And so I still believe that we got to figure out a better way to get these parcels monitored and into the homes, into the hands of people that might want to actually incorporate them into the neighborhood. They have no value. At one point in time, we thought we could assemble enough of those lots to maybe attract an industrial user over there off of the by the yucca plant. At one time, we had a number of vacant lots over there. We still do. But at this point in time, I just kind of bring it to the board's attention that we continue to try and figure out a way of getting these properties. Brian's got a process upstairs, Linda Goslin, that they work out pretty well trying to find people that will buy these and make these part of their existing, areas that they can maintain. But this one here just highlighted the cost of trying to, when these properties come into our possession, of what we're stuck with, and trying to later on maintain these properties, because we got to cut them, mow them, in this case, spend $7,000 just to get rid of the tires and the boat and other accessories. So it's just something to think about going forward, and how to maybe we could use our neighborhood watch and even our community standards to maybe monitor these properties, because dumping has been a problem in certain parts of the township, more so in some parts than others, but it's still one that affects the whole community.
Debbie?
Yeah, I had a question. I wonder, are they typically in industrial areas or in industrial and neighborhood areas.
They're in residential areas. Some of them are these old paper plants that there's not a lot of development. Many of them are in the industrial areas, like over there by the Yucca plant. They may have been a platted subdivision at one time that was never developed. And they're very, very small lots. And so they don't have a whole lot of value. That's why many people, that's why they get turned back to the township, because no one is even willing to even put a minimum bid in.
Okay.
And so we have some in the past that have been on residential areas where neighbors have acquired them to incorporate those or combine those into their existing yards and everything. Many years ago, there were lots that people used to grow gardens and things like that. But I think the more we can get into the hands of the homeowners and even people that want to maintain these for gardening, because a lot of people, even if they're in industrial areas, if they can have these lots, they'll probably, use them for a garden that would be a great for them and their neighbors, no doubt. So
how does the township, like, how would someone, like, if you're a resident and you were interested in something like this, how would they find that out if it comes into the township's hands so late? Like, is there a way where if someone was interested in something like that, or typically are you just looking to add it to the property that's adjacent to it? Or are we looking to add it to?
Brenda may speak on, but I know we have a policy now that governs that, but I was just thinking that with this new website proposal that you're going to be preparing, that one of the things I like to see is to have these parcels listed on the website, even the maps. And I think that the more you advertise that these lots are out there, that a lot of people might express an interest in maybe acquiring them or utilizing them. So I know that there's a policy that we developed in-house, but I think it's more of what you just said, Debbie. It's like more like getting the information out to the people that, hey, these lots are available. Are you interested in acquiring them or utilizing them? So I think maybe that new website that hopefully is going to be redeveloped might also be a tool to get that information out.
Excuse me for just a minute. Trustee Newman, would you just announce your presence and that you're in Ypsilanti Township?
Yes, my name is John Newman, and I'm in Ypsilanti Township, and at my home.
Okay, thank you. Debbie, we do have a policy on it, and the assessing office has reached out to people on both sides of a vacant parcel before to try to sell them, to split them. We've abandoned alleys before to try to do it. And we get these kind of automatically from the treasurer's office. And there are a lot of neighborhoods, and this in particular, these three parcels, I can't put it up on the screen, and I sent an email to see if maybe Lisa could, but if you look at it, like, we couldn't develop it in that manner, and Doug, or Jason on the phone here, I'm not sure, but should we talk about what they're going to actually, well, it does say a restaurant and 2 self-storage facilities. So,
Good.
and so by us doing this, it helps them to actually develop, which is good.
Actually, I think these lots were needed to help the developers who have on-site stormwater management, and also they provide for 2 of the small restaurants that are going to be like drive-up type restaurants, I believe, and also 2 self-storage units. And so this may be for those who've been around for years. I think this is behind the old property. They used to be called the Depot Town Florist, over there across from the old Edmondson Junior High School. And because there was a fruit stand next door that I used to work at. And so I remember this area pretty well, but it's a hard one to develop because the back parts of these properties are usually industrial zoned, and they back up to the railroad. And the front footage is commercial Michigan Avenue, but the lots are not very deep. So this one here is one that might really turn into one that helps the person redevelop this entire area. But I would just mention it for informational purposes that we do have a lot of lots out there that might get some traction if we could maybe get those up on the website. Something like this. This is a good aerial. This shows that, you know, the neighboring streets and everything. This would be good to have an area, I mean, a part of the website that you could just go to for vacant properties and just click on and express your interest. So.
All right. Any other questions?
Can I ask one more question, or if somebody else has one, I just want to ask one more question.
No. Yes, you can, of course.
So I'm wondering, like, do we have a policy or are there allowances in the township for like the tiny style house? Like, I know you said some of the lots are smaller, but I know there are people who are interested in sometimes having just the tiny style. Is that something that's even allowable in the township to build one of the houses that are kind of small where people are trying to make them more eco-friendly and not take up a lot of space?
That would be in the zoning ordinance. I'm not sure. I know we've all talked about tiny houses in the past and using old mobile home park pads, you know, because they already have the cement pad there for 1, 2. But I mean, I'm not sure if it's listed as a tiny house, like if,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
I'll
I can
read
find
up on
out.
I'll
Yeah,
read up on it. I didn't know if that's something that we've talked about before, but with,
yeah, we would some people would really like to do it. Yeah.
with the need for housing, it seems like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's expensive to do a tiny house. You know that?
yeah.
Yeah. It's less affordable, but it is a good use of land, like you said. Trustee Peterson?
Okay, my question is to the attorney, if a person is interested in purchasing property like this, would they bid on the property? Or would you negotiate with the township a price for the property?
I think the policy allows them to negotiate directly with Brian McCleary's office because a lot of these are very, very minimal costs involved. I think in the past, and Brenda can correct me if I'm wrong, I think in some cases they've entered into direct negotiations with the assessing department and just simply did a transaction because again, the value is so minimal and the benefit is greater for us. So this one's a little bit different because of what and it was tie barred to the actual showing that they were going to develop this property for the purpose they claimed they wanted to do, or needed the property. But in your example, Gloria, most of the time, I think a lot of those can be handled in-house, just with Brian McCleary, of course, Linda's oversight. And that's how it usually happens, I think, Brenda. Someone walks in up there and says,
They'll submit, yeah, and I can send the policy around that we adopted, but they submit a request to the the clerk's office, and Brian reviews it. But we've also sent out letters to people. If there's a lot between 2 residents, they will send it out to, the 2 adjoining, sometimes 3 adjoining parcels as well. So if someone approaches us, then we'll go that process, and we have contacted people as well. So I will get a copy of that policy and send it around.
Thank you.
Good questions. Heather, did you?
I was just gonna add to Trustee Swanson's question about the tiny houses. I know that sometimes too, when people are rebuilding houses, depending on what neighborhoods they're in, they'll work with the planning department to make sure that they sort of like conform to the style of homes if it's that kind of setting, but like if you were going to build in the preserves, you probably, I don't know if we'd want a tiny house there, but anyways, just so you know that's kind of another thing that the planning department considers.
Heather, you're right. It needs to be compatible with the other housing. And if it's not, then you go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Okay, so I'm going to send the policy around. All right. Good job. The next agenda item, and probably will take the most discussion, I'm thinking, is the ordinance amending the code of ordinances, chapter 37 for liquor stand. And there is a high, it's red line, but it's blue line version in the packet of some of the changes that were put in.
Thank you. Mike Radzik actually handled this portion of it, so I see he's on now. So I'll let him take it from there because he did all the work on this portion.
Good afternoon. So in order to change the fee schedule, and I think this all kind of started out with changing the fee schedule as an urgent need, but the fee schedule was actually included in the actual ordinance itself. Sometimes we have fee schedules that are adopted separately by resolution. For instance, the development and building fee schedules. In this case, it was actually embedded in the ordinance. So in order to adjust the fee schedule, we had to change the ordinance. So Stan, myself, Doug, and some others started tackling this issue. And as we did, we decided we could take an overall look at the entire liquor ordinance in terms of revisions that were needed. So I guess I'll start with the resolution 2021-05. What I tried to do is lay out the history of the township's approval of on-premise liquor licenses, which would be for bars and restaurants, and lay out the history of the loss of a little more than half of these liquor licenses that the businesses eventually failed. The owners put them into escrow as required by the Liquor Control Commission. And then eventually they put them up for sale and they sold them, and they were transferred to other jurisdictions. Under state law, the way it currently is, a liquor license can be transferred to any other jurisdiction within the county that it resides. So for licenses that were approved by the Ypsilanti Township Board of Trustees, any of those licenses can then be sold and transferred to any other city, township, or village anywhere else in Washtenaw County. And it's reciprocal. Any of those others could come here. So as I put in the resolution, I did my homework on this. I verified the information. Over the past years, 31 on-premise licenses have been approved by the Township Board of Trustees, and 17 of those have been sold and transferred out to other jurisdictions, most of them into the city of Ann Arbor. I think one, maybe two into the city of Ypsilanti, Dexter. There might be a couple of other miscellaneous ones. Over the years, Supervisor Stumbo, myself, and others have met with our state senators and representatives. Ms. Stumbo and I have also met with the chair of the Liquor Control Commission a couple of years ago, and we laid out this loss of liquor licenses, which in the future will have potentially a detrimental impact on economic development. And what we were told was that the Liquor Control Commission is completely powerless to make any of these changes. It has to occur through legislative changes in state law. There was a committee set up. Ypsilanti Township worked with Pittsfield Township and some others at that time a couple of years ago. We made some earnest attempts to get some legislation going to make some changes so that we could either recover or at least stop the bleeding, stop the loss of these licenses. And it just wasn't meant to be at that time, at least because of I think the lobbying pressure from some of the restaurant groups and some of the other groups that are out there. So this is what we're stuck with, at least for the time being. And so the thought process was, let's tighten up our ordinance to do what we can do at the local level to try to reduce the likelihood that any new licenses approved by the Board of Trustees could potentially be lost. And we could do that in a couple of different ways, as Stan alluded to. Stan and others over the years have been strong advocates for tightening up the way the Liquor Committee evaluates the business plan of the proposed license application. We've denied a couple of licenses in the past and took some criticism for it, frankly, but I think in the end it was the right thing to do because most of those businesses, if not all of them, eventually did fail. And those licenses could potentially have been sold and transferred away, just like all the others before them. So what we did in this case, we tightened up the ordinance, and then we are proposing to adopt an entirely new fee schedule that hopefully will eliminate people who are not qualified and provide incentives for those who are to be able to get through the process successfully to be approved. I guess I would ask, Madam Supervisor, how would you like me to go through this? Do you want me to go through it section by section to
Well,
talk about the changes?
Yeah, I was thinking we should go through the highlighted changes,
Okay,
right? Because everything is pretty much the same, and then the fees is
Okay.
next, but you have specific changes in the actual ordinance, right?
yes. So in the what's referred to as the red line version, although it's in blue, not in the color red. I don't know how that happened, but it did.
I like it.
I do too. So in article number 1, previously article number 1 was 100% reserved. Sections 37.1 through 37.20 were completely reserved for future use. And what I did was I added a section 37.1 to speak to the liquor committee because the ordinance as it currently exists makes absolutely no mention of the liquor committee. And as you know, the committee members are recommended by the township supervisor and then approved and appointed by the township board. And so I thought it was important to add a section addressing the liquor committee, what it's comprised of, and what its authority and role in the process is. So I added this section 37.1, which talks about the liquor committee. And it for the first time, I think, at least in ordinance form, outlines the process. So a new application comes in, it by ordinance is directed to the clerk's office, which is the appropriate place for it to be received. The clerk's office would evaluate it to make sure it's in proper form. In other words, all of the requirements and the requests in the application have been supplied and the appropriate fees have been submitted. Once it's accepted, then it would be forwarded to the liquor committee and to all of the township departments that would be required to contribute towards the investigation of the application. But then from that point forward, it specifies that all the different departments, whether it's police, building, fire, zoning, so on and so forth, would then submit their recommendations and their reports directly back to the liquor committee. And then the liquor committee would essentially compile all of those reports. The committee has the authority and the discretion, if it wants, to meet directly with the applicant, to ask for a copy of the applicant's business plan, and then to make a informed decision or valuation on whether or not this application has a strong likelihood of long-term success in terms of a business plan, so that if the Board of Trustees, in its wisdom, decides that it's a good risk to grant them a new liquor license, of which we only have a handful left to give under the quota system, that it will not eventually end up being sold and taken outside of the township, which is just going to hurt economic development, and it's going to hurt the benefit and the choices of our residents going forward in terms of places that are available in the township to go and enjoy yourself. So that's what that section is all about, and it kind of laid all that out in detail. Moving forward, section 37.23 in chapter 2.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
I have a question. I raised my own hand. Lord have mercy. Michael and Stan, why would you not meet with all the applicants? Why would that be at your discretion? I'm just wondering.
There's nothing that says the committee has to meet with them. I think it's strongly advisable, but again, it's up to the committee's discretion, and I'm not sure that that's something that we want to dictate or legislate. So I'll let Stan address that.
I was just gonna say, in the time I've been there, we've met with every applicant. I think Mike was just leaving that flexibility there. Should there ever be a situation that renders a meeting maybe not productive or conducive to what we're trying to accomplish. So a perfect case would be, in all honesty, we issued ourselves at the golf course a liquor license. So meeting with that applicant really would not have served a purpose if we had it in there as mandatory. So.
Well, this wasn't in the ordinance before.
No, but I'm
now-
saying if those type of situations, we use that as the example.
Yeah,
If
I
something
don't-
like that would occur.
Yeah.
We can certainly make it mandatory. I think we're just looking at leaving flexibility.
Well,
One
I just,
example I could think of would be, you may get an applicant, and very quickly, within days or hours, you learn that the applicant is absolutely not going to meet the minimum criteria. Maybe they have a felony conviction for some type of liquor law violation, and you would never consider them. Why continue to meet with them? You can just make that decision right up front.
but once their application is complete, I mean, I just want, I'm just looking for something. I don't want us to be accused of not treating people differently, or not meeting with some people, meeting with, just to be clear, maybe. So what you're saying, Mike, is if they don't meet the application, you wouldn't schedule a liquor committee meeting anyways.
Well,
That
if there was no
I heard.
chance that it could ever be approved because they don't meet the minimum requirements, I mean, it would just be an exercise in futility at that point.
Well, I would hope. I was wondering if Mr. Newman, would you like to say something?
Yes, couldn't there just be a blurb in the ordinance that accounts, that says if the requirements are not met, we will not meet, something like that?
We're not required, yeah.
Yeah. And then that way, it kind of says the reason we're not meeting with you is because you don't meet the requirements. And then that way it kind of covers that discretionary base.
I think that could easily be written in there, that to say that if the application meets all of the minimum requirements, then the liquor committee shall schedule a meeting with the applicant.
Yeah.
And that way it's equitable across the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
That
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Good suggestion, Mr. Newman. Am I
Makes
missing
a lot of
anything?
sense. Okay.
And because there's a difference between transferring a liquor which we want people to transfer licenses in here, right? We want them to just like they did on
Yes.
Washtenaw.
Yes.
But new license, I know you guys, well, the past practice has always been to meet with the liquor committee, right? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I'll be happy to make those changes prior to second reading then.
Yeah,
I'll send them out in advance for everyone to take a look at.
yeah, that's the beauty of it. You get 2 readings. Mr. Winters, have you reviewed this as well?
Yeah, I have reviewed it, and I think I'm just trying to, as I sit here, I can't think of any recent application for a Class C liquor license where the committee probably did not meet with that applicant. And I think given probably the fee structure that's going to change, I think that sometimes the meeting can be more revealing than even the application itself. So I don't see any downside to a meeting with the applicant, even if it doesn't look all that promising, only because they do have a right to come to the township board and make their case at some point in time. And I just think the more knowledge we have of what's going on at the committee level probably will enhance our recommendation or strengthen it one way or the other. So I think it's probably a good practice to continue to try to encourage those applicants to come to the committee for a full vetting. I know in the past, even Trustee Wilson and Treasurer Doe, when they were there, I know they had some pretty pointed questions that at first glance you might not glean from just the application itself. So I think it's worthwhile to continue that.
Okay.
Sounds
Okay.
good. All right, well, I'll make those changes. Moving forward, the next section that includes changes is section 3723.
Good job.
I'm sorry, it's 3724, which is the definitions. And all I did was compare what was in our ordinance to what is in the current Michigan Liquor Control Commission regulations. And I simply updated the definitions to align exactly with what is currently in state law. Just remembering that the definitions we have now were put in place, I think 15 years ago in 2005. And so things evolve over time. And so these were just updated. And as you see from the changes, not all of them changed. Some remained the same. In fact, most remained the same. There was one addition, however. Back in 2005, there was nothing known as alcohol vapor devices, but there are now. And so subsection J is added for a definition of what an alcohol vapor device is. I've never heard of it, but apparently it exists. And so it's regulated, or it will be. After that, 3725 addresses what's required in the application for a new on-premise license. And as Brenda mentioned, this only applies to requests for brand new licenses that would come out of our quota, not transferred licenses. All I did was update some of this and clean up some of the language based on things that we've experienced over the years. For instance, 1A it used to say, give us your name and your age. And now we're saying, give us your name and your birth date. And just so you know, the changes came directly from the application form that the State of Michigan Liquor Control Commission uses. So now ours will mirror exactly what the state is asking for. In order to do a background check, you need the birth date, not just the age. The same for citizenship and place of birth. That's also language taken directly from the state's current application form. Number 7, statement indicating, I just kind of beefed this up, indicating whether the applicant was ever had a similar or other license suspended or revoked, or was found responsible for regulatory violations. And I put that in there because sometimes you may not have had your liquor license suspended or revoked, but you might have pled guilty to or pled responsible to a civil infraction violation of a liquor code. And we would want to know that when we're vetting you. Number 8, regarding prior convictions. Again, this language was taken exactly verbatim from the State of Michigan application form for a new on-premise license, so that ours exactly mirrors the state's. In number 10, I added zoning and building code compliance to all the other listed things because that's something we find ourselves dealing with on a regular basis. On 13, I added business registration and code enforcement and inspection fees because back in 2005, when this was last updated, we did not have business registration. And then I added a section 14 where the liquor committee, in addition to what's laid out as the minimum requirements, the committee may require additional information that it deems appropriate in order to make a fully informed recommendation to the township board. So that's kind of a catch-all for anything that might come up in discussions along the way. Most of these other changes were just cleaning up grammatical things and beefing things up a little bit, adding zoning compliance and updating some of the terminology.
Michael,
Yes.
I have a question, and for the, maybe it can be incorporated into the second reading. Can we put a statement in there that if new laws come to the state level, that it will be incorporated into our ordinance? Or can we put any type of language that if there's any other ways of doing alcohol, which I don't, if there's new alcohol licenses and kind of have a catch-all, so you don't have to come back and amend the ordinance every time, and I'm not sure if you can, but I was just thinking of that.
Like, you're referring to like different forms of alcohol, like the
Yeah,
vapor?
Yeah,
That's a great question. I guess I would defer to Doug on that, but we could add some catch-all, generic catch-all, any other product containing alcohol available for sale to the general public.
because if not, we're gonna have to come back, right?
Yes, yep. Doug and
Or
I
we
could
say
talk
we
about
don't-
that afterwards and see if we can come up with some language.
I'm sorry, Heather?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I think what you were thinking is like at the end of contracts, it's usually, or at the beginning, sometimes it say, like, anything within this, ordinance is not to withstand or undermine any state law or something to that effect. Is that what you mean?
I was trying to figure out a way to do that. Yeah, of course, we're not lawyers, Mr. Winters is, but I wish there was, because if not, we're gonna have to come back and have to amend it, because a lot of these new licenses, we didn't have any idea how to handle them because they were new, but anyways, yes, Heather, we're thinking the same thing. You can vape alcohol? I don't get that. Up your nose?
Apparently,
That's gonna be not good.
no.
Can do a
right.
sinus rinse, but I don't know if alcohol could go up your, all right, I'm sorry.
I'll share some other stories with you later about other avenues of taking it.
Heather, I'm sure you've seen things in the ER.
Well, okay. I'm sorry about that.
So moving on, in section C, that's entitled Recommendation from the Liquor Committee and Township Departments. This is kind of a revamp. And this basically will codify the process we're currently using and put it in written form so that everybody is clear on what it is and what every department's expectation is. Once the application comes in and the clerk's office deems that it is complete with the right fees, it gets disseminated to the liquor committee and all of the applicable departments. Then each department fully investigates the applicant for their area of expertise and submits their recommendation and review back to the liquor committee. Once the committee then receives all those departmental reports, they then review them all, take those all into consideration along with whatever they've gleaned from their meeting with the applicant and any other side information that they've requested. And then the committee can make a 100% fully informed final recommendation to the township board. So in other words, right now, our ordinance says that each department makes a separate recommendation to the board, and this will clean it up so that every department is funneling it right back to the committee, and the committee has all the information and can put it all together in a way that makes sense and make a final, fully informed recommendation to the board that is comprehensive in nature and meets all the requirements and has answered all the questions that have come up. If that makes sense.
Yes.
The next section D, this was where the application fees were embedded in the ordinance. And we simply struck all that and make reference to the fee schedule that the township board adopts by resolution. And it also keeps in there the availability to not charge a fee for charitable and nonprofit licenses, which we
Okay,
currently do now, and that keeps that intact.
Mike, Heather has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I just had a question. Of course, the clerk's office always receives and takes in the application, but I guess to me, the onus is on the applicant to make sure that their application is complete. So I wouldn't want to have a situation where, I don't know, like they didn't put their place of, birth or something, that I just want to, put on the record that I think that it's the applicant's job to make sure that their application is correct. I don't think that it should be on the clerk's office to proofread it. Of course, at the table, we're gonna overlook it with them, make sure everything's there, remind them that the fee's not returnable or refundable, and talk them through the process. But, just to know that if you're applying for the application, it's your, it's,
It's on you.
yeah. And not that we're
I
not
agree.
help and advise and to overlook things with you, but just to know that it's on the applicant.
Well,
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, but if they submit an application and it's not complete, are you going to distribute it? Heather, or the clerk's office?
I think that from how I'm reading this process, we would, take the fee from them. And again, of course, at the desk, all of us are gonna, kind of browse through the application. But then at that point, to me in the process, it seems like I would then, submit it to or hand it over to the committee to review as needed. Because it's not our discretion in the clerk's office to, deem whether or not it should go to the liquor committee, I think.
What I would recommend we do, if it's acceptable, is something similar to what we do currently for development agreements and development projects. We could have a simple checklist that would be available in the clerk's office. And when you receive a application, you would simply look to make sure that each section has been filled out, not necessarily evaluate the content, but just to make sure it's been answered. And then any external documents that are required to be presented, like a copy of a lease for the building or whatever else it might be, it would just be a checklist. Did they provide this? Did they provide that? And if they provided all the documents that are asked for and every section has been filled out with some information and the fees are correct, then I think it would be, appropriate to accept it. But clearly, if something is missing and it's obvious it's missing, you can easily just reject it and say, well, you're missing this, this, and this, and come back when you have everything.
So I guess just a follow-up would be like, what if they submit, they come and we have our checklist and we go through it and then, they accidentally left out pages 3 through 5 of their lease. I mean.
Well, that's the type of detail that I don't know that would be expected at that point. That's something that probably the liquor committee or one of the departments evaluating it would dig deep enough to see something like that. But clearly, if they didn't, if there were 5 sections on the form and section 3 was completely blank and they didn't have a copy of a lease or a deed, that would be an obvious reason to say, well, this is incomplete and we can't accept it.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to work with you guys, and I think it'd be pretty simple to come up with a pretty fairly simple checklist that would be very easy for all the staff to be able to follow.
Mike, we can sit this week and do that if you like.
Yeah, I don't think that would be very difficult.
Another way to think about it is maybe the checklist is for the person who's turning it in. They're checking it off and initializing that they've completed those things. And the onus again is on the person who's completing it. Cause I'm thinking like we have 5. And if the application isn't being done, I mean, that says something too, right? Like if you want this very valuable thing, I don't know, cause you want to help people, but at some point people have to be really, it's a decision that people are taking, you've got to do it. I mean, I think most things that you churn in that are that serious, you've got to make sure that you've completed it, because that is a lot, I think, for the clerk's office. And then I think then you get into a place where somebody could say, well, you told me, I don't think we want to be in that kind of a situation. But that's just my thought on it.
May just be easy enough to sit with Mike, and Mike will look at the application, put together a checklist and make it the very last page of the document. Once they've completed the application form, the last page is simply a checklist for them to go back, and we'll include a place that they can sign off on it, that their application is complete to the best of their ability.
I think that's fair, and that would also aid the clerk's office in being able to figure out if everything required is there or not.
Yeah, I see, I thought I saw a hand go up.
I can't find my hand on the icon here.
It's at the bottom. Mr.
I
Williams?
know, I just can't. In the past, I probably have used the word checklist probably more than most people do, but I think in this situation, I know we're kind of still have yet to come to the application itself. I think the application in this situation is pretty much the checklist. And
It's
I
pretty clear.
don't think you need a checklist upon a checklist. I think what, from Heather's standpoint, if somebody doesn't have the information or it doesn't apply to them, they simply put down not applicable, or they leave it blank. And I think that once they pay their fees and they fill out to the best of their ability, I mean, for example, on the very first page, they have to identify the type of license that they're going to be asking approval of. And if that was blank, then someone would say, you got to at least tell us what license what are you applying for?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that that Heather and the staff there are not necessarily going to be having to get bogged down in the veracity of the application form itself, and did they really do all of this? But I think that the application form itself is really a checklist in this case. And at some point in time, yeah, they may not have a federal ID tax number, so they might use a social security number. I don't know. So I think that the form would be the one that I would follow. If it says not applicable, they could say not, and maybe it should have a place on there for them to say not applicable, so that would allow them to continue on with the application. So I think we can work through that, but I think those are all valid, comments to make as to how to process these. But again, the detail in the application form itself, as you've gone through it, will, I think, give you, a very clear picture as to who is applying for what. Do they own the building? Are they leasing? How many employees? What renovations, if any, are they going to be making? So it's a pretty detailed checklist.
And not to jump ahead, but page 2 of the application actually goes through the requirements and procedures and outlines it pretty distinctly what they need.
Do we feel comfortable that we'll be able to work through this issue then
Yeah.
between now and next reading?
Yeah. This is what it's for. Is Mr. Trustee Newman?
Oh, I was just going to ask, can there be a couple of examples, that the people that the committee could have as to what a correct application looks like? Or is there something that, well, I guess the instructions pretty much stated what you need. But I just thought about someone who may not understand the process, or may not be able to, someone who's checking that may not be able to go through everything at that time. They could just see a correct example of a liquor application. But I guess because it's so involved, because there are different businesses, different types of business, that may not be, the correct way. Just a thought. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We can think about it, and then, there'll be changes at the next meeting anyways. Because I know that sometimes people come up and they'll say, well, am I zoned for this? They should do that. It shouldn't be the clerk's office to do that. But I think as far as having an application, it has to be submitted somewhere. And I know that the clerk's office looks at stuff that's submitted to them already, as long as it, like Heather said, wasn't upon her to determine if it was accurate or not. You're just making sure the application's filled out and all the blanks are filled in. But I think there has to be at least one clearinghouse, because you don't want to get an application that's not correct and then send it off. We're going to lose it.
Mhm.
It might, that could easily happen, especially once we get rolling here. Stan, were you for Heather? You were first. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear, like, I completely agree. Our office is more than happy to receive them. But, I think we talked at the beginning about like being fair to all people. So I don't ever want there to be a situation where it's like, oh, the clerk's office, didn't tell me that I didn't, have the correct building facade plan. Like I don't know that our staff is going to be able to determine if
No, that's,
the site plan or the zoning's correct. So that's what I mean. And I want to be
okay.
fair to all people and just make sure that, the application simply being filled out, all the check boxes are done. Of course, we're going to do that. We're so happy to do that for our residents. But we just, again, the onus has to be on the applicant. Is a big deal. They're getting a big license, and so I don't know if it could like just reflect that somewhere. But of course, we can work it out and bring all the changes back.
Mhm. Okay, Stan?
Well, I'm just reading through, and I don't want to jump ahead, but
But
page 2 of the application, item 2, places the onus on the applicant that they shall fully complete the form. And so I don't know that I would attach anything to the ordinance about a checklist, and I'm not sure after listening to the discussion that we really need one. I think pages 1 and 2 really cover what the burden is for the applicant, and just kind of leave it at that. And when I'm here, I can certainly walk down and help take the application as well and read it since I'm 100 feet away.
I think,
we want a process that just is clear, and I think we can get there easily. Stan, you're right, and fill
Yeah,
out
I
the
think-
daggone application. I mean, they're gonna have to do it at the state too, so.
Well, and again, this application is pretty
Simple.
clear in the first 3 pages of what the process is. And again, as Mike mentioned earlier, if we're looking at issuing a liquor license, they should have, a pretty good idea of what's required of them. If not, that may be the first red flag that goes up that this might not be the right applicant.
Okay, we'll fine tune it, right?
Yep.
okay. Is it okay to move forward then?
Mhm.
All
Sure.
right.
Oh, Debbie, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Debbie has-
hold on, just before we go into the other part, I had a question about a different part where you didn't make a change, and I'd like to have that because it kind of goes a little bit with what we're talking about. So on page 124, D, application fees. There's a part where it talks about at the discretion of the township clerk that there might be able to be a change in like the fees. And I wasn't sure if we're trying to tighten everything up, why we would want to have that discretion, especially with the conversation we're having now about trying to appear fairness and not having that, why we would have that language in there. So if somebody could help me understand that. Pardon?
I said I don't want any discretion. No, none, please.
I can explain that. So this talks about multiple licenses. I'll give you a classic example. It is very common for someone to apply to the state of Michigan for a new Class C license for a bar restaurant. Most bar restaurants also have what's called an SDM license, which is I forget what it stands for, but the acronym, but basically it allows them to sell takeout beer and wine. So you can go to the restaurant, you can order, you can drink there, and then you can buy a 6-pack to take with you, right? SDM is a specially designated merchant, and then an SDD is a specially designated distributor. One allows you to sell beer and wine for takeout, and the other allows you to sell liquor, spirits, whiskey, whatever for takeout. So even though those licenses may not specifically require board approval, it may come to us from the state saying they're asking for a Class C and an SDD and an SDM and a Sunday sales permit and this and this and this. So the discretion would be, are we going to charge them the full boat fee for each one of those things? That's really all to be considered together as a package? Or do we have the discretion to just charge them the one fee? Because it's not going to burden the investigative effort anymore than it would if it was just a Class C. So that, I think that's why that was in there. In the event they do apply for more than one thing, for use at the same time, at the same place, we have the discretion to only charge them a single fee.
Heather, that's confusing. Heather?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing that up, Debbie. Like I feel like me and Stan have read this thing over 100 times, but then when we sit down and talk, it like really helps to understand that. And so that's again like a process issue of like, I don't want to be, I don't think I understand like the liquor law stuff enough to be the person that determines if someone has to pay $5,000 or $1,000 or, you know what I mean? Like especially in that situation that you just described, Mike. And I know that it's a really common thing right now with COVID that people are able to do that, you know, selling liquor like to go where they wouldn't have normally done that. So, I mean, hopefully we're going to get back to days where that's not a thing anymore. We can all go back and be normal, but yeah, it's confusing. I don't know how that would look.
That could easily be stricken, and then it could be left to the board's discretion on what they wanted to eventually charge.
So would I not take an application fee at that time? And maybe this is it too in the weeds and we can talk about it this week, but.
It probably is kind of down deep in the weeds. I could think of examples that could go either way. So I would say either strike the language or clean it up in a way that makes it a little clearer. Stan, can we talk about this before second reading then?
Yeah, I was just waiting for my hand to get called, but I didn't want to get in trouble.
Well, people were talking, Stan.
Yeah, what I would
Well, follow my lead. I'm a troublemaker.
what I would recommend is that we strike it, and then at the point that it comes before the full board, that's where we could discuss then amongst the board whether they want to waive it or not, so that we're all privy to that information and why we would consider a waiver on a case-by-case applicant.
Waiver or reimbursement?
I'm sorry, a waiver of the fee or a reimbursement of the fee.
Because
Yeah,
by the time it gets to the board, it's already been processed, right?
correct. So it would be a reimbursement.
Would-
Yeah, and I think we've done that in the past.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh,
Good catch, though. I missed that in all the readings, Debbie. I've read that 5 or 6 times and I missed it.
Heather?
I'm sorry. When we say reimbursement, though, it's confusing because it explicitly states on our fees that they're non-refundable. So again, maybe we can like filter out those possibilities this week before second reading, but you can't reimburse someone for a non-refundable fee.
We did that though, when someone applied, who was it? Was it Tower Inn? Not Tower, was it Big Boy?
Yeah, it was, right.
We did that as a board, and
Doug,
just
I think
because of the way it
board,
was written, it made
Well-
him have that person to pay twice, I think, for the same request.
Well, and
So
I
the
think,
board did waive it.
well, and I think the non-refundable portion of that is in our policy, which we certainly as a board have a right to change. It's not in the ordinance. So as long as it's not in the ordinance, the board does have the ability on a case by case to reimburse those fees, I would think.
Well, the board, not the clerk, is what Heather was, or
Right.
Debbie.
Right, that's
someone
correct.
Brought it up, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I
Okay,
guess, and I haven't been here very long, but I guess what I was thinking is that your liquor committee would do some heavy lifting. And so it seems to me like if things are being processed, that the board, at least the liquor committee, would have some thinking around it to come to the board to be able to say, here's why we think this should be, whatever term we want to use about why it would be, there'd be a change, where the discretion would take place and why that discretion's happening. So,
Yeah.
so that there's some group of a committee that's becoming more experts in this kind of area and what the township and the board's going to vote on it, but you got to have some people doing that reading and that thinking and
Yeah.
getting into the weeds
And
and
in the
understanding.
past, right, they
Yeah, and
made,
that's, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think in the past, actually the clerk did make the recommendation, so it would come from the liquor committee.
Yeah, and we've done that on a couple with Jimmy and Larry and I through the years, and Scott Martin when he was here. So that would be the appropriate place for us to vet that and then bring it to the full board at that point. So
Who let the dogs out?
woof,
Okay.
woof.
That was a joke. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm really upset over the groundhog. So what is, shall we continue, Michael?
Yes. Subsection E, the term of license. It previously stated that the license is good for a period of 1 year. As we thought through this, we realized every state liquor license expires on April 30th of every year. And so regardless of when the Board of Trustees approves it, it's going to naturally expire on April 30th. And so the language was simply adjusted to say that the term would be for no more than a period of 1 year and shall conform to the requirements and the expiration cycles of state law, if that makes sense. So that they will all expire at the same time. And then that, I apologize for the background noise here. That rolls into the next section of license renewal. Hold on one second.
Please. There's any more hands up? There was another section in here that it referred to the liquor enforcement officer. Who's that? I didn't know who that was.
Well, I know we used to have them when I first arrived on the board, but I think we did away with those positions 14 or 15 years ago.
I think our ordinance department does the annual checks, right, for the liquor license?
Correct, yeah.
But I don't know if they're called the liquor enforcement officer. I don't know. Mike, I was just wondering, that I was trying to look for the term of liquor enforcement officer. Is that our
Yes.
ordinance?
Yeah, the liquor ordinance actually designates our ordinance officers as liquor control officers for the purpose of enforcing this liquor ordinance.
Okay,
And they're also granted authority to enforce all of the state liquor regulations. And we do that on a regular basis in cooperation with the LCC.
so a liquor enforcement officer is our ordinance officers or?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, okay.
So then that rolls into license renewal. There was nothing in the ordinance that exists now about license renewal. It just said that each license was good for a period of 1 year. Many years ago, I had a very detailed conversation and then some documents back and forth with Angela King on this topic. And she helped clarify this for all of us. Essentially, every liquor license under the state guidelines expires on April 30th. The state of Michigan will renew that license if they meet the state criteria, regardless of what the township does or doesn't do, unless the township files an official objection to that license renewal. And the state law has some very specific guidelines on how and when that has to be done. So the township, as you know, we can submit something to the state asking them to revoke a license at any time during the year. But when it comes to not renewing the license annually, it has to be done very specifically. And so this was added to basically say that each license expires each year concurrent with their state license. And it puts the responsibility on the license holder to apply. And I put to apply to the Office of Community Standards only because that's the department that does the annual liquor inspections of all of the license holders every year. And if it should go to a different place, I'm more than happy to change it. But each license holder then would be responsible to apply for their annual renewal to the township no later than 90 days before it expires, which would be February 1st. We would then schedule our inspections. And I'll tell you, as we do it right now, this is how we do it now under our policy. And this is just an effort to put our policy and our procedures into the actual ordinance. So beginning in mid-January or so, we start scheduling our annual inspections. We conduct them in the month of February. If we find code violations that would give us cause to object to the state renewal, we give them a notice of violation and a reasonable opportunity to make the corrections. If they don't, then we come to the township board and we ask to schedule a public hearing to go through the due diligence process to object to the renewal. Under state law, all of that has to be done, and the township board has to pass a resolution objecting, and that all has to be given to the state of Michigan no later than March 30th. So that whole process, we kind of backtrack the timeline. So if everyone applies by February 1st, that gives us plenty of time to do the inspection, give them an NOV if there's a problem, give them a chance to fix it. And if they don't, and if there's cause for us to object, then we can bring it to the board, have the public hearing, fulfill the due process requirements, and pass the resolution and get it to the state in enough time to meet their deadlines in order to object to the renewal. So this was added in there to not only document the way we've been doing it for many years, which has been successful, but also to meet the requirements of state law.
Trustee Newman?
Is the what you explained, is that when you renew your license, that's every year, but what you just explained with the inspections, is that done every year to every vendor?
Mm-hmm.
It's done every year to every on-premise license holder. So the bars, the restaurants, anybody that serves liquor that can be consumed on the premises. That does not apply to party stores, grocery stores, or any carry-out businesses.
So like Aubrey's, for instance?
Yes.
Okay.
Aubrey's, the Marriott, every other restaurant and bar, all the golf courses that sell liquor, they all go through that every year.
Okay.
Debbie?
Okay.
And the reason we do that is so that we know whether there's cause that we should bring to the board's attention so that we can file an objection with the state in enough time if there's a reason to do so.
Which we have done. Trustee Peterson and then Trustee Swanson.
Mike, has there ever been a time that someone had missed the deadline, and what was the outcome? Do they lose their license totally, period? Can they resubmit? What?
There's never been a time that I'm aware of where someone missed the deadline to make corrections. I can tell you, there's been times, I think Arthur's Bar on East Michigan Avenue and a couple of the other smaller establishments over the years, they may have had some violations of building code or fire code. And we could tell the inspectors and the fire marshal would report that they're making very genuine efforts and they're working towards it. They've got it half done, 3/4 done. Maybe they're running into some financial problems and they're just going to need a little bit more time, but we can see that they're honest and genuine about it. We didn't bring it to the board because we knew they were earnest and they were honest and they were genuinely working towards it. But the ordinance department follows it through till it's concluded. If we got past that objection deadline and there was still a problem and they just dropped the ball, we could always still come later back to the board and say, we're going to ask you to revoke it as opposed to not renewing it. It's at the state level, it's the same thing. It's just a matter of timing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Swanson.
So I was wondering about the licenses that are issued from Ypsilanti Township but are no longer here. So once that license moves to another location, is that then the responsibility of the other location, or are we responsible to follow up on those that were issued through Ypsilanti Township?
So it would be the responsibility of the municipality where they're operating to do the inspections and all that. However, in perpetuity, forever and ever, it still counts against our quota.
And any renewal fees goes to
To
the
the
township or to
Nope,
the
to the
jurisdiction they
jurisdiction
move?
where they're operating. Yep.
Okay,
I don't, is there a renewal fee? What is it?
The
Because
only
it's not-
renewal fee we ever charge, Brenda, is for the inspection time. So
No,
it's generally $150. So we charge $50 for the fire marshal, for the building inspector, and then for the liquor control ordinance officer.
Yeah, so it's not in the adopted fees per se.
That's a great point. We could add that in for the license renewal permit or inspection fees.
Oh, okay. Because you do charge them, I know, because
Yes, yes. And I'll also point out, besides the actual physical inspection for license renewal, I added in here language that would require the Office of Community Standards, and it would fall on my position, either myself or whoever's in that position down the road, not only look at the physical condition of the building, but let's go into their liquor control file, which is available online, and see, have they been cited for selling to minors, for any other violations of the liquor laws over the past 12 months. Also, it would require that we look at the police and fire calls for service at the location. Has there been a public nuisance? Has there been a pattern of public nuisance and problems that need to be addressed? It's not all just physical condition and liquor law. It could be all these other things that you're all very well attuned to because of the public nuisance cases that come before you on a regular basis. So I kind of try to wrap all those things, all those different disciplines into that renewal process to make sure that if we decide we're not going to object to the annual renewal, it's because they're operating a safe and clean business.
all right.
So then moving forward, there weren't many more changes other than some cleaning up some grammatical things, except for under the section H, that's criteria for non-renewal or revocation. We beefed this up a little bit, and I'll be quite honest with you, when Stan and myself and others talked about this, we specifically had the situation that we've encountered for many years at the Elks Club at Ecorse and Harris in mind. And so you're all probably very familiar with the challenges at that location and the fact that we ended up having to go to circuit court, and it was a very difficult situation for everybody involved, to say the least. So we beefed this up. We added language specifically in paragraph B, looking for a pattern of patron conduct upon or in the neighborhood, which is a violation of law or which disturbs the peace, the order, the tranquility of the neighborhood, including but not limited to on-street parking congestion, diminished traffic and pedestrian safety, litter, unreasonable noise. And then we added section D, the failure to maintain the safety and security of the licensed premises and the exterior grounds free from dangerous or unlawful activity.
Right.
Moving forward, I think that was pretty much it for that. Everything else was pretty much just cleaning up language and aligning it with the current state law. So that pretty much concludes the comprehensive revisions for the ordinance in itself. And then the only thing left would be the application form itself, which Stan can speak to, I think, in detail, and then the fee schedule, which we worked on together.
Thank you, Michael. So we want to move to the liquor license application quickly, kind of.
Yeah, there was not many changes from the original form based on comments from the last meeting. I did add the 30 business days under the requirements, number 2 that Debbie had mentioned. I added in a date of birth that Mike had mentioned earlier tonight that we needed rather than an age. And I'm just trying to remember, other than that, the application itself stayed pretty consistent. And on the last page of that form, the fee schedule, Mike and I met again after the comments from the last meeting and came up with the numbers that you see, which really didn't change a whole lot except for lowering a couple at the bottom for the instances where there's a change for stock ownership, addition of space, maybe a deletion of a partner. We took that down from the 25 to the 1,500. And then I just made a note to sit with Mike tomorrow or this week to add the license renewal numbers that he just mentioned so that it's on the fee schedule, so we see that. Really, otherwise, the application is the same. I think it's, having worked on it X amount of hours, I think it's pretty comprehensive. The first 3 pages, I'm sorry, provide the process and outline the expectations of the applicant's requirements in the process. So I think those will be beneficial to them because we've never had that before. And then the form itself, the application actually starts on page 4 and just works its way through. As Doug mentioned earlier, there's places where there's a not applicable section or other that should be suffice to cover all of the incidents that comes forth. But again, it's a fluid document that we as a board can look at and make changes to during the course of the time moving forward. And the hope is that we can agree on it this evening to approve it so that we can get them into the clerk's office. We already had a gentleman in earlier today who's using it, but he's under the old fee schedule right now. And then hopefully we can get it to our IT department where they can put it online, and not only for visual purposes, but also maybe a way that they can fill it out right online and bring it in to us. But I can answer any questions on it or try.
Heather?
And I just wanted to share that that gentleman that came in today was actually using the old one still.
Yeah, oh, he is using the old one, okay. Which would be appropriate because he's had this process already underway for a while.
If I may, could I just point out a couple of quick things on the fee schedule?
Go ahead, Mike.
Did you raise your hand, Michael? Okay.
Sorry. So I just wanted to point out a couple of different things as Stan and I were going through this, thinking about the workload that's involved for staff doing these background investigations, as well as trying to provide proper incentives. The new on-premise license that would come out of the township's quota, there's no question the $5,000 is very appropriate. I do want to point out though that for new, if somebody applies for a microbrewer license or a winemaker license to the state of Michigan, that would not ever come to the board for approval because that's just a manufacturing license. It's only if they ask for the on-premise permit that goes with it. And some manufacturers ask for that and some don't. So if they want to be able to offer a tasting room on the premise or sell directly to consumers to drink it on the premise, then they're going to have to apply for the microbrewer or the winemaker license with that on-premise permit attached. And it's that permit that allows the on-premise consumption that the Board of Trustees has the authority to approve or disapprove. And so the background investigation, not only for the location, but also for the applicant, is essentially the same as it would be for a Class C. Transfer of location and ownership for an existing on-premise license is the same way. Let's just say, for example, let's say Aubrey's for some reason went defunct and they put their license into escrow. another applicant bought it and wants to use it at a different location in Ypsilanti Township. The Township Board has never investigated or vetted this applicant before, and this location has never had a liquor license before. So we would go through the same exact process that we would if they were asking for a brand new Class C out of our quota. So therefore, the fee should be the same, exactly the same. For these transfers, if it's just a transfer of location by an applicant that was previously approved by the board, we don't have to reinvestigate the applicant. We just have to look into the location. And the reverse is true if we've already investigated the location and approved it, but now we just have a new owner. But if it's a transfer of location from outside the township, for instance, the gentleman with the polling warehouse, so he bought one of TGI Friday's licenses in escrow out of Pittsfield, but he's going to bring it here. The Township Board has never vetted this applicant before, and we've never had a liquor license at that corner at Washington Gulfside before. And so we're going to have to do a full-blown investigation of applicant and location, just like we would for a Class C. So that licensing fee is justified in sense of the workload. So I just wanted to point out the differences and the thought process that went into these different variables that are out there.
Okay. Trustee Swanson? Did you have your hand up, and Mr. Trustee Newman's not?
But I think Trustee Newman was up first, so.
Oh, well, they need to have one hand with.
I
one
know,
finger.
sorry. I
Trustee
saw it.
Newman, it comes in the corner of my screen. That's all I know.
No, I could let, we could let Debbie Swanson go ahead. I could ask my question.
No, go ahead. It doesn't-
Okay. Basically, I know we talked about it being constantly updated to align with the state. So how would that be done? Say, for instance, if the state makes an amendment to the liquor license, how will we be able to update our criteria to align with the state?
Good question.
It depends on what kind of a change is made. It might be a change that would not require an update to our ordinance, but it might be a change that would require us to come back and amend our ordinance. It's done quite often with criminal ordinances. The change, the state may make a change. Like, for instance, if the state of Michigan suddenly said, you know what, 0.08 is not the threshold for drunk driving anymore, it's going to be 0.06. We would have to amend our ordinance to align it with those new laws. They might make some other minor technical change that didn't require that, and it would be up to legal counsel to advise us on how we would need to respond to that.
And so you would make that effective globally in the within the area, that change? I guess, within the county. For instance, if the state makes a change to amend their policy, then how soon would we be able to amend ours to be aligned with the state? Would it be immediately or,
2 readings, right, Mike? We would have to have 2 readings.
Yeah, I
From
think
the
as soon as
ordinance.
we became aware of it and Doug's office said, yep, we need to amend our ordinance, we would have to go through 2 readings. So you're talking at least a minimum of 2 board meetings.
Okay.
A lot of times the building code will adopt whatever, like the whole year of the building codes, and we change our ordinance to adopt those codes. So maybe we can do something like that. I'm not sure. Trustee
Yeah,
Swanson.
you're right. Our building ordinance is written in such a way that whenever the state updates to the new code, we automatically adopt it. Yeah.
Trustee Swanson.
Yep, I had 2 quick ones. The first one is, how do we determine like when that 30-day start? Like, how are we going to get a timestamp or a date stamp to determine that? And then the second question is on page 8. So I don't know, how would we determine if the 30 days starts? how that's gonna happen?
And that may be a question more for Heather. I don't know, when they handed out the packets in the past from the clerk's office, is there a book or somewhere where they note who they've handed a packet to on what date? It could be as simple as that. Yeah, so I agree, somewhere we have to denote what day they picked it up on, so we know when the clock begins to run.
Right.
Okay, so that's to be determined. The other question I have is on page 8. And maybe this is just not something I don't understand, but number 6 says that fingerprints of the applicant must be on file with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. So can somebody explain what that means? Does that mean once they apply for this, that those fingerprints are on file like indefinitely? Is it like as a teacher, you get fingerprinted, they do a little background check, and then after that, like they're not kept somewhere. Because I can imagine like people don't want their fingerprints necessarily on file and kept and held somewhere. So I'm just wondering if somebody could explain what that means, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Once you give law enforcement your prints, because it's required, like when you apply for a liquor license with the state, you have to give your fingerprints. It's not like the old days when you're rolling your fingers in ink on a piece of paper. It's done electronically through the AFIS system, the automated fingerprint identification system. The moment your prints are taken into the AFIS system, it immediately goes into the National Crime Information Center, the FBI system. It's there forever, as far as I know.
Right, it's in perpetuity, and I think they have to give those, Mike, if I'm wrong, when they file at the state level with the LCC.
Yes.
That's simply why it's asked here, Debbie, that did they meet that requirement? Is it on file with I think they have to do it within the county of where they're going to hold the license.
We don't keep them.
You do not have anything to do with it.
Okay, but what it means though is if you want a liquor license, then you have to agree to have your fingerprints, whether you've done something or you haven't done something, your fingerprints now become part of that system.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted clarification.
Yeah, that's been that way for as far back as I can remember.
The only
State
point
requirement.
of clarification, I don't think we have it at the township. The sheriff's department would do the fingerprints, but we don't keep fingerprints in the clerk's office.
We do not.
No.
Okay.
It's very difficult to get prints returned. I can tell you, even if you're arrested and later exonerated, you have to go through a protracted legal process to get your prints back from the State Police Records Division.
Yeah.
Heather?
You're muted.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, it's just about that within 30 business days of, like, I guess I don't know what that means either. Cause when I read it the other times under the second requirement, I always thought it kind of prompted us to like, within 30 business days, we're gonna like meet with the committee and yada, yada. But that's not what it says actually. So I think I missed when you guys were talking, like, within 30 days of what?
Within,
On the internet?
am I muted? I'm sorry.
What,
Well, the question was, when does the 30 days begin? It begins when they pick the packet up. And I think what Debbie was asking is, how do we know what date that will be? And
They can download it on the internet.
it's not when they pick it up, it's when they submit it, isn't it? The application? No?
That's what I originally read it as, is like when they submit it, we would timestamp it here, but that's not what it says. Because I think that it'll be available on the internet, right, Stan? So
it will, and I'll have to go back and change, because we talked about the internet after this was written. And maybe it's something that we don't put out there, because I'm open to anything, but if we're gonna have them pick it up here at the township and ask them to have it back within 30 days, then we're gonna have to have some book or manner of record keeping as to when we handed it out. When did we get it back? And
I don't think we can require that, Stan. I think anyone has a right to pick up an application.
And I'm okay with that too. I'm just following our past, the past forms. So the 30 days was just increased from what it was before.
I guess I just like, I don't know what like the intent, like, what does that give us? Like, why is there a 30-day requirement? What's the purpose behind it?
I just, 30 days was talked about at the last meeting.
Yeah,
Filling
no,
the- Filling the form out and having it back within a span of time is just something I took off the other applications that we've had.
Okay.
So we can delete it. I have no problem deleting it. There's no numbers on these applications, so it's not like we're keeping a
Right,
record of how many we hand out.
right, yeah.
So I have no problem deleting that. I just know it was discussed at the last meeting.
I can't remember what we discussed, to be honest. I'm so sorry.
No, we
don't
just
know
discussed
why-
whether it was business or calendar at the last meeting. We didn't.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's, again, I don't think there's a need to have it. It's just trying to follow some of the past forms that we've used.
Michael?
I don't know why that was in the original application form from years ago. And I don't know why we couldn't have this available on the internet. But I do think because there's only a handful of new Class C licenses available in our quota to give, I think it's very important if there were ever a situation where we received multiple applications for new licenses at approximately the same time, it may become very important on who applied when in terms of priority to be considered, because there may come a time when we run out. And you don't want to run the risk of somebody saying, well, hey, I applied, 2 days before this person and you gave them a license and not me. So
Well, Mike,
record
that's a
keeping
great
is
point.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I guess that's for other board members to talk about and get your thoughts on.
Well, and so we're not, when they submit their application, we can we'll hit the receive stamp or whatever. And we can make it say that, but it doesn't say that right now,
Okay, well, we can change that language so it takes out the complete within 30 days and we'll just make mention that it'll be time stamped or date stamped when it goes out so that there is some manner to determine who took them out in what order. Should we be down to a final and we have 3 applicants, we'll know in what order to bring them in for review.
Mr. Winters has his hands raised.
I don't even,
I stepped out, so maybe I missed something, but I'm a little bit confused. I don't think it really matters to the township. I don't think it should. You could have 100 people come tomorrow and pick up an application. What difference does it make? The only date that I think really matters is the date in which it's returned to the township and it's completed. I mean, I don't think you need to track how many applications you sent out or the date that they were sent out. What really matters is to when they are returned. I think that's what triggers the whole process, when they get returned and someone puts their dollar down on the application and here you go. So I wouldn't get hung up on how many you send out or how many are picked up. I would be more concerned about what Heather would do, is just simply type in date and time received. Each time we get sued with a lawsuit or we get served with something, I've seen that date stamp many times come over here, received by the clerk's office at January 3rd. May not have the time on it, but it shows you the date that it was received. I think that's what is the most controlling date for how you handle the application. But again, people might pick these up and after reading it may decide not to return it for any number of reasons. It just they might just be curious and then say, okay, this is not what I want to do. So I wouldn't worry about that part because
Yeah, if there's no objection from anyone, I'll just go ahead and delete number 2 and we'll take that out of there totally.
Trustee Newman?
I thought about a scenario where 2 people submit their licenses maybe an hour apart, one of the license, and so, well, one of the licenses is correct and the other isn't. So, but the one person who submitted an hour earlier or 2 hours earlier is not correct, but the other person who submitted did. So I'm thinking, you know, do we stamp when they turn it in? And is it just turned in or turned in correctly? Or because people can turn in anything incorrectly just to have it handed in first.
We gotta think
That's
that
my
one
view, would
through.
just be when it's turned in and not necessarily whether it's correctly or not.
Okay. Yeah.
That would then again put the onus on staff in the clerk's office to determine what's correct and what's not.
Right.
I do think it's important, getting back to the earlier conversation. I know there's certain things in the planning department that has a shot clock on it, if you will, for the staff. Somebody may apply for something and the ordinance says it has to be acted on within so many days. So when they apply, that shot clock starts. And I'm just thinking, if two people apply an hour or two apart, like you said, the one that came in first turns out to be an incomplete application. Sections were missing, required documents were not included. Is that then considered to be accepted? Just because they turn it in doesn't mean you've accepted it necessarily, because it's incomplete. So those records are very important.
We can talk that through more. Heather?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for Treasurer Eldridge, my preference would be that under that section 2, that like if we're gonna do anything, not to erase the whole thing, but just to get rid of the within 30 business days. Because I still think it's really important that it says the applicant shall fully complete, you know, the packet and submit it to the clerk's office.
Got it. Thank you.
So the only thing I would add is that I could see a reason why we'd want them to move within 30 days. I could see putting it on the website. I could see somebody pulling it off the website. I could see somebody starting to do like, okay, what is this about? I'm starting to collect things. But then I'm just wondering, like, wouldn't we want to know, like, somebody's pretty serious about this? And it seems like that 30 days would let the township know we've got a serious applicant here. So maybe they've officially pull it from the clerk's office in 30 days, but at least we know, because it's going to kick in staff work and things that have to be done coming up. And so it seems like it makes sense to me. We might want to know that somebody's seriously considering it enough to come pull an application in that way. It wouldn't bar somebody from pulling it up, working 6 months on it, and then officially when they get to the point where they want to pull it and they're going to, I could see a case where we might want to know that in 30 days, we've got something coming versus otherwise we may not know. We could have 20 turned in within a week. So I could see that, but I could live either way with it.
I think it would be hard to track. That's all. If someone pulled a permit and we have to track if they had it for 30, I mean, not a permit, an application for 30 days. That I'm not sure why it's in there. Lord knows. I mean, it's an old ordinance.
I wasn't either. I'll go ahead and just delete it for now and sit with the supervisor, the clerk, and Mike and Attorney Winters. I'm sure we'll come up with the right wording.
There are a lot of requirements in this application form. It's going to take anybody more than 30 days to probably, you know, obtain anyways. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork they have to go through. Zoning compliance, verification, site, I mean, there's all kinds of requirements here that, again, I think what really matters is when it's turned in and Heather accepts the money, confirms it's been received. And like Debbie said earlier, it's going to get referred to the liquor committee and they're going to be the ones that are going to be vetting. And I don't think their determination is going to be made on, did I receive this one at 3:45 as opposed to 2:45. I think there's a lot of, and even the liquor committees is just a recommend, it's an advisory body. It's to the township board. So I think there's a lot of good changes that you've discussed, but I would still think that I wouldn't let the procedure kind of overwhelm what we're trying to achieve in terms of the
Mhm.
product.
Okay. Well, can we take a break because we have a meeting at 7?
Yep.
Okay, and we'll resume. It's 6:46, and then see you guys in a few minutes. Okay. Our old business, we have the request to approve the proposal for professional services from CNC Consulting for the creation of a website redesign proposal in an amount not to exceed 16,200, which is budget in line item 101-266-000-801-000, and this needs to be removed from table.
So moved, Eldridge.
Support Swanson.
Motion by Eldridge, support by Swanson to remove from table. We'll do a roll call vote. Swanson,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Eldridge,
Yes.
Wilson Jr.,
Yes.
and Newman.
Yes.
And Stumbo votes yes. The item is now properly before the board.
I would so move the request to approve the proposal.
Support Wilson.
So motion by Gerald Rose, support by Wilson Jr. to approve the item that was previously tabled. I know that Travis McDougall is available on Zoom if we have any questions from him. For him, it was tabled last time due to we didn't have a limit on not to exceed amount. And if it does have to be amended, they can bring it back and ask for more dollars. So I appreciate putting that limit on it and hourly rate as well. Hearing no more, are there any other questions or comment? We're going to have an updated website, you guys, and this is going to be great. Well, this is going to do the proposal, then we're going to bid it out, but it'll be really good once we get it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Under new business, we have resolution 2021-04, which is authorizing the Charter Township Ypsilanti to sell to Scott Chatfield 3 vacant parcels, which is located at 29 Broadmoor Avenue, 24 Lakewood Avenue, and 30 Lakewood Avenue in the amount of $10,000. Clerk Rowe.
I have resolution 2021-04, authorizing the Charter Township of Ypsilanti to sell to purchaser Scott Chatfield 3 vacant parcels located at 29 Broadmoor Avenue, 24 Lakewood Avenue, and 30 Lakewood Avenue. Whereas on or about December 28, 2011, Washtenaw County Treasurer Catherine McCleary, acting in her capacity as foreclosing governmental unit under the authority of the General Property Tax Act, foreclosed upon certain properties in the Washtenaw County Circuit Court due to delinquent real property tax, which included 3 vacant parcels located in Ypsilanti Township, to wit, 29 Broadmoor Avenue, 24 Lakewood Avenue, and 30 Lakewood Avenue. Whereas on or about December 30th, 2011, the Charter Township of Ypsilanti received a quitclaim deed from County Treasurer McCleary, which included the legal descriptions of the 3 vacant parcels, which are as follows. Parcel 1, K11-02-457-007, Broadmoor Ave, Ypsilanti, Michigan, 48198, with a legal description of YP number sign 5531, lot 445, Devonshire subdivision number 4. Parcel 2, K11-02-457-008, Lakewood Ave, Ypsilanti, Michigan, 48198, with a legal description of YP number sign 5520, lot 435, Devonshire subdivision number 4. Parcel 3, K11-02-457-009, Lakewood Avenue, Ypsilanti, Michigan, 48198, with a legal description of YP number sign 5521, lot 436, Devonshire subdivision number 4. And whereas on February 20th, 2020, Scott Chatfield requested the Ypsilanti Township Assessing Department to purchase the 3 vacant lots as described above, which were needed by him to develop, and I quote, 2 875 square feet drive in restaurant buildings and 2 self-storage buildings of 4,500 square feet and 4,900 square feet respectively, end quote, on properties that are all continuous with the township's 3 vacant parcels, all of which are located between Lakeview Avenue and Broadmoor Street, near 2002 East Michigan Avenue. And whereas at a regular board meeting held on April 21st, 2020, the Ypsilanti Township Board of Trustees authorizes the sale of the 3 vacant lots to purchaser Scott Chatfield, which according to the appraisal report prepared by Deputy Assessor Brian McCleary, dated March 16th, 2020, are valued at $10,000. And whereas during the remainder of 2020 and 2021, purchaser Scott Chatfield has followed through in obtaining all the necessary approvals from the required reviewing agencies, including Ypsilanti Township, YCUA, Washtenaw County Water Resource Commission, needed to develop the drive-in and self-storage projects, which development will incorporate the 3 vacant lots owned by the township and will enable purchaser Scott Chatfield to adhere to all of the stormwater management requirements, as well as construct an on-site retention basin to handle all of the runoff water from the site. And whereas on January 18th, 2021, Scott Chatfield signed the proposed purchase agreement, a copy of which is attached hereto and incorporated by reference, in which he will remit to the township in the sum of $10,000 in accordance with the appraisal report dated March 16th, 2020. Now therefore it be resolved that the Charter Township of Ypsilanti Board of Trustees hereby resolves as follows. 1, that the Township Board accept the purchase offer submitted hereto and authorize the execution of the purchase agreement by Supervisor Brenda L. Stembo and Clerk Heather Gerald Rowe. 2, that the Township authorize Supervisor Stembo and Clerk Gerald Rowe to execute all documents required by Campbell Title Company to effectuate the transfer of the 3 vacant parcels to purchaser Scott Chatfield once a closing date has been scheduled. 3, that a certified copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Campbell Title as set forth in paragraph 23 of the purchase agreement. I so move this very lovely resolution, Mr. Winters.
Support Eldridge.
Motion Joe Rose, support Eldridge. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the first reading of resolution 2021-05, proposed ordinance to 2021-494, and ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 37, liquor. There. Clerk Rowe.
I'm
Joe.
ready. All right, I have resolution 2021-05, amending chapter 37 of the Ypsilanti Township Code of Ordinances. Whereas the Township Code of Ordinances, chapter 37, contains provisions regarding liquor licensing, liquor control enforcement, and liquor inspections, and whereas chapter 37 was last updated and revised in accordance with adoption of ordinance number 2005-360 on August 16, 2005, and whereas the number of new on-site or on-premise liquor license available to be approved by the Board of Trustees is limited by a quota system mandated by state law and controlled by state liquor control regulations. And whereas the number of on-premise liquor license available to be approved by Ypsilanti Township as a local governmental unit of the state is restricted by state law to 1 license for every 1,500 residents, which currently equates to a total of 36 on-premise liquor licenses based upon 2010 U.S. Census data reporting the township's population as 53,362 people. And whereas to date, the Board of Trustees has approved a total of 31 new on-premise liquor licenses intended to be used by businesses operating in Ypsilanti Township for the benefit of township residents, and whereas an analysis of the new on-premise liquor license previously approved by the Board of Trustees shows that 17 of 31 new on-premise liquor licenses approved by the Board of Trustees and intended for use in Ypsilanti Township, which equals approximately 55% of all licenses granted to applicants, have been sold by the applicant and transferred for use in other local government units within Washtenaw County. Whereas in addition to 17 on-premise liquor licenses have been sold and transferred out of Ypsilanti Township, an additional 5 on-premise liquor licenses in Ypsilanti Township are currently held in escrow and are not being used. And whereas the typical monetary value of an on-premise liquor license asset offered for sale on the open market has been reliably reported to be as much as 80 times more than the current license application fee being charged by Ypsilanti Township. And whereas the 17 new on-premise liquor license approved by the Board of Trustees and transferred out for use in other communities continue to be counted in perpetuity against Ypsilanti Township's quota of on-premise liquor license in accordance with the state law and regulations, with no recourse available to retain or recover such licenses to promote future economic development for the benefit of township residents. And whereas in light of the pattern of loss of on-premise liquor licenses and the desire to improve the manner and process used to consider applications for new on-premise liquor licenses, proposed ordinance number 2021-494 attached updates and revises chapter 37 in its entirety, defines the authority and the role of the Township Liquor Committee, clarifies the application process for various township departments, updates definitions to align with changes in state law, updates the minimum required contents of a license application, removes application fees and refers to a new fee schedule to be adopted by the Board of Trustees, defines the process and criteria for annual license renewal, and updates the criteria for non-renewal or revocation of a license. Now therefore be resolved that ordinance number 2021-494 attached hereto is adopted by reference. I would so move the resolution.
Support Wilson.
There's a motion by Jervo, supported by Wilson, to move the first reading of this ordinance. We had like an hour and a half discussion, and there's lots of proposed changes to come back, to the board for second reading, which happens often when you're doing ordinances. Are there any questions regarding the first reading of this ordinance by board members or public? There's just a lot of discussion and proposed changes. So this ordinance refers to fees being adopted by the schedule and the application, and we're adopting that separately. Is that everyone's understanding?
Correct.
It's attached to this ordinance, but so it doesn't, the ordinance refers to the fact that it's going to be, the fees are separate. So I'm okay with doing the first reading. I think there's a lot of fine tuning and great comments that came from board members that we have to perfect, but I think it's a lot of work has been done. And I know Angie King also did a lot of work on this in the past. And so I appreciate everyone's work on it, but it's going to be changed by the second reading. That's, I guess, my only point I'd like to make. So when we do an ordinance, we have a motion of support. We have a roll call vote. Trustee Swanson,
Yes.
Peterson. First reading.
Yes.
Clerk Rowe, Gerald Rowe,
Yes.
Treasurer Eldridge,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson Jr.,
Yes.
Trustee Newman,
Yes.
Stumbo votes yes as well, so the first reading is approved. The next item on the agenda is a request to approve an updated liquor license application.
Okay, I have resolution 2021-06. Liquor licensing fee schedule. Whereas
No. Miss, it's the application, or are we doing the application or?
sorry, did I miss it? You're right, right. I'm just
Still
on a roll.
move the application, Eldridge.
Yeah, that's fine. Motion Eldridge. Is there
Support, Joe Rowe.
Support Gerald Rowe. There were some changes made and recommended in the work session that need to be incorporated.
Yeah, I made those during the break. And I'll pass those to the clerk and we'll get them out to everybody.
Well, and when we do second reading, and let's take our time to do second reading and get everything right, I think the application will also be attached to it, right?
Correct.
That gives us another opportunity to see the changes that were made. I just have one concern that we didn't have time in the, it's not a concern, it's just when people file an application with the township, we can like redact certain information, but we can't just destroy it. And in one section of this, I'm trying to find it now, they talked about after 5 days of the liquor committee meeting, if it was denied, then it'll be destroyed. I'm not sure by state law if we can do that. So that's the only thing we have to look at again to make sure. And the sensitivity and the reason for wanting to do it there's a lot of financial and personal information there, and I completely understand that. I think we need to protect it, but I don't think we can destroy it like that. There's a panelist. Who is there? Oh, Gerald Rowe.
Thank you, Supervisor Stumbo, I can check with the retention, like the filing, because I didn't think of that before, but I just wanted to clarify. I know that the ordinance refers to this fee, but are we saying that it needs to come back for a second reading? That wasn't my understanding, I guess, originally.
Second reading of what?
Like, are we gonna revisit the application next time?
The application is going to be changed per the discussion of the work session, and it's not in the board packet that we're voting on. And it will be attached to the second reading is like the changes that we discussed on the application is not in the board packet.
Clerk Rowe, what I will do is make the changes and we can approve it this evening, bring it back so that at the next reading for the fee schedule and for the ordinance, I'll make sure it's there and everybody can review it again. If we have to make subsequent changes or anything, we can do it again.
Well, yeah, because we didn't know at the work session that we were gonna make changes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, and I know that we want to, like, move on this, but I'm just wondering if it should be voted on at the same time with the ordinance.
With the second reading,
Yeah,
so table it this time and make the corrections and bring it back.
that's an option. I'm looking for the will of the board.
That's the clearest process. It brings clarity, and all the changes that were discussed in the work session would be part of it. But it would have to be tabled, Heather. Clerk Rowe, Gerald Rowe.
Trustees, Treasurer Eldridge, is that a friendly amendment to our motion?
Sure, if that makes it easier for everybody.
All right, so we'll change to motion to table
Okay, motion Gerald Rowe to table.
until the next reading of the ordinance.
Is there support?
Support Peterson.
Support Peterson to table. We'll do a roll call vote. Swanson,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Rowe, Gerald Rowe,
Yes.
Eldridge,
Yes.
Wilson Jr.,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
and Stumbo votes yes as well. Would the same be true then for the next item?
I didn't hear anybody voice any objections to the fee schedule, but
Okay. Next item on the agenda then is the liquor licensing fee schedule, resolution 2021-06. Clerk Gerald Will.
Sorry, I was just taking a note. All right, I have resolution 2021-06, the liquor licensing fee schedule, whereas the Township Code of Ordinance, Chapter 37 contains specific provisions establishing liquor licensing fees, and whereas the number of new on-premise liquor licenses available to be approved by the Board of Trustees is limited by a quota system mandated by state law and controlled by state liquor control regulations, and whereas the number of on-site premise liquor license available to be approved by Ypsilanti Township as the local governmental unit is restricted by state law to one license for every 1,500 residents, which currently equates to a total quota of 36 on-premises liquor licenses based upon the 2010 U.S. Census data showing the township's population of 53,362 people. And whereas to date, the Board of Trustees has approved a total of 31 new on-premise liquor licenses intended for use by businesses operating in the township, Ypsilanti Township, for the benefit of township residents. And whereas an analysis of new on-premise liquor control licenses previously approved by the Board of Trustees shows that 17 of 31 new on-premise liquor licenses approved by the Board of Trustees and intended for the use in Ypsilanti Township, which equals approximately 55% of all new licenses granted to applicants, have been sold by the applicant and transferred outside of Ypsilanti Township and other local government units within Washtenaw County. And whereas in addition to the loss of 17 on-premise liquor licenses, 5 additional on-premises liquor licenses in Ypsilanti Township are currently held in escrow and are not being used. And whereas the 17 on-premise liquor licenses approved by the Board of Trustees and transferred out for the use in other communities continue to be counted in perpetuity against Ypsilanti Township's quota of on-premises liquor licenses in accordance with state law and state regulations, with no recourse available to retain or recover such licenses to further promote future economic development for the benefit of the residents of Ypsilanti Township. And whereas the typical monetary value of an on-premise liquor license is offered for the sale on the open market has been reliably reported to be as much as 80 times more than the current license application fee being charged by Ypsilanti Township. And whereas the licensing fee currently being charged for new on-premise liquor licenses is misaligned with the true market value of such a licenses, thereby contributing to the continued pattern of loss of such licenses being sold and transferred outside of Ypsilanti Township to the detriment of economic development and township residents. And whereas the Township Liquor Committee has studied liquor licensing fees and has recommended removing licensing fees from Chapter 37 of the Code of Ordinances and adopting a separate liquor license fee schedule that can be periodically reviewed and revised as necessary by the Board of Trustees for the benefit of the community. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the liquor license fee schedule attached hereto is adopted by reference. Just for the record, I'll read it in the liquor license application fee schedule, effective upon adoption. New on-premise licenses, such as Class C, tavern, hotel, $5,000. New manufacturing or non-rental licenses with on-premise permit, such as microbrewer and winemaker, $5,000. Transfer of location and ownership of existing on-premise licenses, $5,000. Transfer of location of existing on-premise license previously approved by Ypsilanti Township, $2,500. Transfer of ownership of existing on-premise licenses previously approved by Ypsilanti Township, $2,500. Transfer of location of existing on-premise licenses previously approved outside of Ypsilanti Township, $5,000. Other changes, stock ownership, addition of space, deletion of partner, etc., $1,000. Other required changes not specified, $1,000. I would so move the liquor license application fee schedule.
Support Elders with one friendly amendment. During the work session, Director Radzik made mention of a license renewal for building, fire inspections, liquor control officer inspection that totals $150. And I think we talked about including that on the fee schedule.
That's a friendly amendment.
Yes.
I accept.
Dan, you brought this forward. Do you want to talk about why we are increasing it and the reasons for all the changes?
It just is mentioned in the resolution. It just brings us more in line with other communities throughout Southeast Michigan. The fees we had previously were excessively under market value, and we've seen the loss of so many licenses through the years that were obtained here in the township and taken to other communities. And by bringing our fee schedule into consistency with our neighbors throughout the region, it should only provide us as a benefit to try and keep those licenses within the township to help us down the road with future economic development issues.
And the liquor committee members are Trustee Swanson, Wilson Jr. You guys, I know, put a lot of time into it as well, correct? Are you so in support of the changes that are proposed?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know you guys met and talk a lot.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on the previous board as well, as far as coming up to speed with other municipalities, as well as trying to have more serious applicants.
And consistency and fairness, and
Exactly.
that's a good reason to do it. Any questions or comments from anyone else? I think the fees look high, but I am going to trust the fellow board members, and they can be adjusted if they seem to be too high. If we run into some issues where it's like totally cost prohibitive for anyone to do some of the newer licenses. I'm just not as familiar with them as, well, none of us are really, because they're new and new things come up all the time. But I do appreciate all the effort that I know Mike Radzik spent hours writing and trying to revise the ordinances and stuff, and Stan and the liquor committee. So I appreciate all the effort in trying to make it a fair and equitable ordinance. So, Mr. Newman?
Yes, I just wanted to say, this is a comment. I just wanted to say that it looks, I think that this is, while it may be high, I think it would only bring serious people only. And I think because before, to my understanding, at the prices that it was easy to transfer to someone else where they could take it outside of the Ypsilanti Township. So this is a good start.
Thank you. Other comments, Mr. Winters?
Yeah, well, the only comment I would add to this point is this. There's a great deal of material that has to accompany the liquor license application. And there's going to be an awful lot of work done by the liquor committee and probably outside consultants that are going to be reviewing everything from business plans to background checks to might even have some legal issues in regards to these applications. So I do think right now that it's trying to at least make sure the township has some kind of a cost recovery for all the time and effort that a lot of people are going to be probably expending on reviewing these applications. If they actually get filled out in the manner and spirit called for in the application document, there could be some, I know in the past, Trustee Wilson and you and yourself, we looked at the one lease that was, and that involved the Woodstone Inn, where they were trying to lease that establishment for a liquor license. And I'm not sure who drafted that lease, but it was a pretty, had a lot of hidden tricks and different rabbit holes that we had to spend time to even find out what it really meant. At the end of the day, I think it required the licensee to give back the liquor license to the owner who already had a liquor license to begin with. So it's things like that that sometimes you don't always at first glance think of when you receive these documents, but there will be a pretty thorough vetting of all these financial legal documents because it is a legal process. And
Right.
just want to put out there that there is a lot of other people that may be touching this application besides the liquor committee members themselves.
Right, I agree. And Mike Radzik's video feed went down wherever he's at. So that's why he's not on the Zoom meeting like he was in the work session. I just want to state that. All right, so we have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is a request to approve the service agreement between Washtenaw County and Ypsilanti Township for the 2019-2020 Senior Nutrition Program.
Move to approve.
Support Eldridge.
Motion Wilson Jr., support Eldridge. I know Angela Burgess is also on the Zoom call. If you have any questions, are there any questions regarding this? So we're doing 2019 and 2020. Evidently, it wasn't returned to the township in 2019. So we have to reapprove it with the changes, and Attorney Winters has reviewed it. Angela, do you have anything else to add?
No, Madam Supervisor, nothing else to add at this time. You covered it for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So we have a motion support. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Number 6, the request to approve the service agreement between Washtenaw County, Ypsilanti Township for the 2020 to 2021 Senior Nutrition Program.
So move, Joe Rowe.
Support Peterson.
So motion and support to approve the contract for this current year. Are there questions or comments on it? Mr. Winters, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, and not only in this contract, but in the one that follows. And it sounds very technical, and I guess it probably is, but in all these contracts, the township is being asked to indemnify Washtenaw County, which is a standard clause. But as you've known from previous contracts, we always have I'm talking to Mike Hoffmeister today, we always have an extra sentence put in these paragraphs that make it clear that by nothing herein limits or waives or restricts the township from asserting its governmental immunity defense. I hate to, always say that, but we've talked about this in the past, but that has to go into these contracts because we cannot waive our governmental immunity defense, even when the contract involves another municipality. So Mike's aware of the language. He and I talked about it today. And so that needs to be added to the contract in that one paragraph number 7. And I think the next agreement, the same language will need to be added as well. Otherwise, it's in proper form.
So we approved the first one without that condition and that change. So we'll make that change on that one as well.
Yeah, in fact, if the first one, the services have already been completed. That was a
Right.
2019, and they're trying to get their bookkeeping in order. And I did find a letter back in 2019 where the same recommendation was made back in 2019 as well. So we've always made that as part of these contracts. So,
So we won't sign these until that language is inserted.
yes.
Clerk Gerald Rowe?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Attorney Winters, if you could, I know you said you talked to Mike about it, but could you just for me say again what you wanted to say before I sign it?
Yeah.
It's in the letter, right? Is it-
It just, the
Under
one,
number-
the one sentence will just read as follows. Nothing herein,
What page?
under Article 7, right?
it's Article 7. It'll be, nothing herein shall be construed to waive, comma, limit, comma, or restrict any governmental immunity defense available to the contractor, Ypsilanti Township.
Did they agree to that, Mr. Winters?
They always have in the past because that's
Okay,
standard language.
I agree with you. We can't waive our immunity.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and support to approve the contract with those changes as noted, and this expires in September of this year, so we'll have to remember in maybe July or June to ask them to send it to us again so that we can put it on the future agendas this year. Time is already going fast, you guys. Any more questions or comments?
I was just wondering about the first one, the line that said that it was substantially different than what was approved the first time. Is there a way for someone, or is it possible for us to get a little summary about what it was different?
Angela Burgess, do you have those changes?
I don't know what it is offhand without looking at them side by side, but it was something that they changed from
Okay.
year to year in there. And I know that Attorney Winters had caught that for us, that there
Right.
was a difference in the two contracts.
It didn't increase our cost, so the substantial change didn't.
No, it didn't affect cost in any way because they reimburse us for money spent. So,
Okay.
no.
When they sent the contract over, it was just substantially different than it had been previously. So Attorney Winters reviewed it and requested all these changes to it. And it looks like the one wasn't in it, but 2019, 2020 is already over, and we can't get reimbursement unless we have a signed contract. Any other questions or comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with the change inserted by as requested by our attorney. Number 7 is a request to approve to apply for the 2021 Community Development Block Grant in the amount of $157,154 to complete the design and engineering for Phase 2 of the reimagined Washtenaw and Ypsilanti Township.
So moved, Joe Rowe.
Support
Motion-
Watson.
Motion Joe Rowe, support Swanson. I know that Mr. Hoffmeister is on the Zoom call. Would you like to summarize it?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Mike Hoffmeister, Residential Services Director. As you know, each year Ypsilanti Township is allotted a number of dollars allocated by the Community Development Block Grant through Washtenaw County. We've been having a number of conversations with them through the last month or so regarding our 2021 allotment and prioritizing projects for that allotment of funding. It was recommended by staff as well as in partnership with Washtenaw County that we utilize the 2021 application and funds to start the design, engineering, and easement work related to completing Reimagine Washtenaw, which was started, I believe, in 2020. And so we are in current discussions with Washtenaw County to complete the application. The deadline is February 12th for that application. And the Office of Community Economic Development from the county is assisting us with that application. This is an intent, so the board can go ahead and support the intent of the funding if awarded for the 2021 fiscal year.
Questions or comments? If board members would recall, I think it was before the new board members were installed, but a resident had requested the process for how we allocate CBDG dollars. So, and in the past, we would just do it internally. So now we're going to start just to formally do it. And so everyone's aware of how we intend on using the CBDG dollars for our allocation. So it was a recommendation by one of our residents to clearly define a process. So we're doing that. We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 8 is budget amendment number 2. Clerk Gerald.
All right, I have budget amendment number 2 for 2021. And just to briefly explain what this does, it moves our current budgeted revenue and expenditure amounts into 2 separate funds. And this was at the recommendation of our auditor at PSLZ, who we've used for a long time. And it's just to, oh, you're on here, Joe. I'm sorry. I'm like doing your thing. It's just to reallocate those, or to separate the funds so that the millage funds go into, their separate spaces. And I'm sure that Giovanna can answer any other questions if I'm not explaining it correctly.
No, I think you went over it really well, Heather. Thank you so much. So it was recommended by the auditor to go ahead and separate the special millages that we have for pension and for the capital and capital improvements into their own separate funds. We've tracked those internally with their own cost centers. And however, on our financial statements, we did separate those. So we have to separate them anyway. We have to track them separate. So we just thought it would be best to go ahead and give them their own fund so that we could look at those at any time and pull those up within just a very quick amount of time instead of having to do spreadsheets for those. So the budget amendment is asking for us to reduce the fund balance, the funds in that were budgeted for 2021 in the fire fund by the $2,574,624, and then to split those into the separate funds for pension and then for the capital millage.
All right, I'm sorry, I broke Robert's rules. I should have read the motion first. So I have motion to amend the 2021 budget. I would move to decrease the fire fund budget by $2,574,624 to $4,323,072 and approve the department line item changes as outlined. Move to increase the fire pension and OPEB millage fund by $1,878,010 to $1,878,010 and approve the department line items changes as outlined. Move to increase the new fire special millage capital fund budget by $696,614 to $696,614 and approve the department line item changes as outlined. So move.
There's a motion by Gerald Rowe.
Support Swanson.
Support. Thank you. Support by Swanson. Discussion. What we'll do is we'll put them in your mailboxes, but we'll make tabs in the new sections in the budget for the 2021 budget for everyone to have for their binder and stuff. And then in moving forward, we'll have these in 2022 and beyond. All right, we have a motion. Oh, we have one, Mr. Newman.
So this will be a cleaner way to segregate all of the different funds.
That is
Millages.
correct. The millage.
Millages, yes.
Is
Mhm.
correct. Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
we've just done it, we've split it in the financial statements, but it's been in one fund, so this is
Okay.
just a better way to track it. I will be coming back to the board for your pleasure to, at the end of the year for the 2020, we will have a fund balance left over that will need to be transferred to those funds, the new funds that we have, and I'll bring that back in July to reflect that, just to let you know.
all right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Authorization and bids, we have the request to award the low bid for the publishing of the Ypsilanti Township Magazine to Community Publishing and Marketing in the amount of $31,357.50 per year for 3 years, budget and line items 226, 226, 000, 900, 000, 230, 751, 000, 800, 000, and 101, 267, 000, 900, and approval of the agreement contingent upon the attorney's review.
So moved, Eldridge.
Support Peterson.
Motion Eldridge, supported by Peterson. Mr. Hoffmeister?
Yes, good evening again. Back in late 2020, the board authorized staff to go out to bid using RFP process to seek sealed bids regarding a new idea of a township magazine. We did receive 4 bids, which was great to see. There's our new one. Thank you, Supervisor Stumbo. Hopefully everyone has received that. That is the first edition in the thought process of having 3 editions per year. Obviously, we'll only have 2 more editions printed in 2021. So the actual dollar value slated for 2021 is approximately $20,905 budgeted. And then going forward, we would budget the full $31,000 amount in future years of the agreement. The idea is to get more documents, more news, more rec programming, golf, and township news, recycling reminders, et cetera, into the hands of our residents. We know social media does a lot, but not everything. And so we feel it's important to get more information into our residents' hands more often. And so that's the idea. Community Publishing and Marketing does a number of magazines for other communities throughout the Metro Detroit area. They have what they call as their Today brand. We are not going with that particular brand. We would like to start our own Ypsi Township brand. And so that's what we're looking for. So I'm hoping that this goes through. It's an exciting opportunity to publish what we're doing more often and brag a little bit more about what we're doing in the township.
Questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, Trustee Wilson.
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to ask you, I think I seen in the memo that the first edition went out through Allegra. And you said we were previously under contract with them. Is that contract is completed now, right? Or, okay. And then as far as content and design, you'll be kind of working with them hand in hand?
That's correct. So staff will work with the designer hand in hand. We will ensure that it is reviewed by elected officials. Anybody that has content will review content. Basically, it's not just me. It's the RSD clerks, it's rec staff, it's golf staff, and park staff members as well. Just to touch on the Allegra comment, this was put out to bid 5 years ago for 1 publication per year, which is the Helpful Handbook. And 2021 was indeed the last edition as part of that agreement.
Okay, and then final question I had is the 3-year. was there any reason we didn't, or I guess I should ask in the contract, I didn't see it, is there a way, if we are not satisfied in the first year or two, to get out of this contract that we do not owe for the remainder of the contract?
We can put that in there because it's approval
Great.
contingent upon the attorney.
That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, if we could add that in, the motion to, I think it was in there, wasn't it? Per attorney approval? All right,
Approval, yeah.
all right, great, thank you.
Good point, Jimmy. Allegra has done an outstanding job for the township and this must not be their niche because they were like $16,000 higher, I think, almost 6,000 higher per
Year.
No, per publishing.
Ah,
Yeah, I was surprised that they have done a great job for Ypsilanti Township, and we changed the whole way we did it for our last edition. I think we received positive responses, and they love the pictures, and it was, I haven't heard any negative, about the new layout, and Mike Hoffmeister really championed that and brought it forward, and Carly and everyone had to submit all their information, and it's quite an undertaking to do, but I do think it turned out very, very well, Michael, and I commend you on that and all the staff that worked on it. But I'm gonna miss Allegra, but hey, this is an experienced publishing and marketing company, so we'll make it work, and if we don't like it, we'll get out, right? Right, Mr. Winters?
But it's a pretty skinny contract right now. So if I heard Trustee Wilson, you want to have a 1-year contract with an option to extend a second year as opposed to?
well, the 3-year is fine as long as there's a get out clause somewhere where we won't be on the hook for the remainder of the contract at whatever time we want to get out of the contract.
There's actually a bid that was put out for this
The
too.
first and second bid are pretty close. That's why I'm asking. I don't know if we wanted, is it with an option so many days prior to the beginning of the second year, whether or not we want to stay with them, something along those lines. That might be.
The only thing is, I think we bid it out for a 3-year contract. I'd have to go back to the bids. I can't recall, but we'd have to compare them. But if the quality is not there, and which I think it will be, I'm not saying it's not, but we would probably need a opt-out clause or dissatisfied with the product or something, which is a good point, Jimmy, because this is a brand new contract. Last time we just awarded the bid, right? We didn't really have a contract like this.
So is an opt-out clause possible, being that we did go out for a 3-year bid?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
I'm not an attorney, but Mr. Winters heard what you said about somehow making sure that they meet, because it has to be delivered by a certain time. There's a schedule that they have to meet in order to get it mailed and in the houses for the residents. But I know this, based on what was said, that they're an experienced company, but we do need to do, we normally don't have a contract, so this is something new, maybe.
Okay.
We can add that more language to it per attorney, but it's an excellent point. Is that enough information or direction, Mr. Winter?
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with the suggestions, and I think I can work with Mike and try and satisfy that.
Great. We gotta do it soon, because when's it going out? April is the next one. So we can do it though. We can do it. So we have a motion support to approve it contingent upon the attorney's review and approval. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. There's no other business before the board. Are there any board member updates?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of remind the board, as well as our township attorney, that I believe March 31st, we have a sunset provision coming up for the marijuana ordinances. So I don't know where we're at with that, but I don't know if we need to, because I know it takes 2 readings to do anything with the ordinance. So if that's something that we need to think about pushing back further, possibly, if we're not ready, or if we need to buckle down in the month of February to get something put together. But I just wanted to kind of make everyone aware, reminding that that's
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Heather, Gerald Rowe.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to quickly share with everyone that this morning at the recreation conference, Mike Hoffmeister and Angela Burgess and everyone, they were just our township was recognized for a skate park facility that was built. So just to give them a little shout out for all the work they did, and thank you. Thank you guys. And we're excited about that being in our township. We should all be proud of it.
Thank you. Trustee Swanson.
So I just wanted to say thank you to the staff again. I'm very grateful for the hard work. It's clear when you look at the packets, the work that our staff is putting in, including the 3-time officials. I'm very grateful for that. Specifically, I'd like to say thank you to Robin Kesselheim and Carly. I think Willis is her last name. I've attended 2 neighborhood watch meetings, and they're such great ambassadors for the township. So the way they interact with residents, the way they answer questions, they're so positive and they're upbeat, and you can tell they've built relationships with the neighborhood watch leaders. And I'm also very grateful for the people who stepped up in the neighborhoods to be leaders. I want to extend a gratitude for that too. But those 2 staff members, and there are probably other people who've come also, but they really do a nice job being ambassadors for the township and meeting with the residents. So I want to say that I appreciate the employees, and I'd like to give a shout out to Robin and to Carly tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I know, speaking of employees, and Stan and I discussed this yesterday about it's so different to collect taxes right now, and people are making appointments, and the employees are really going the extra mile to accommodate the residents, because we have to let them in the door and, you know, walk them in. And then one employee in particular actually walked a senior citizen out, and it's really great how much our employees continue to serve our residents even during the pandemic. And I agree with you, Debbie. I appreciate it. Yeah, applause is right. I do know that Trustee Swanson is gathering information still on the ethics policy, and hopes to bring it back to the board in the next 30 days, just a discussion on it. And we have had meetings with Green Oaks Golf Course and regarding the liquor license there, and some of the things that we need to make sure are in place. So we're proceeding to work on that. We had a meeting on that as well. Like Heather said, we received the award from the Michigan Parks for our skate park design. It's M Parks Magazine recognized us for the design of our community skate park. And because the things we did also included our drain commission and just sustainability, and the way they were really impressed by our skate park, and we were given the award. And Stan and Heather and I were on Zoom watching it. It's not the same, but we were still excited and very proud of the staff, Hoffmeister and Angie and John Hines, who was involved with it. So that was cool. Another good news is Crazy Crab at 2800 Washtenaw at the old Big Boy is going to be on the Planning Commission agenda for consideration of a transfer. Is it a transfer of a license, I think? I'm not sure, but the Crazy Crab Restaurant is actually going to the Planning Commission. I think that's very exciting as well. And I can't think of anything else other than that's it. I just want to update everyone. And I too thank everyone and the patience of the board members when we're trying to get through the Zoom. Eventually, I'd like to get what people are seeing or what people are reading. I would like the public to be able to see. So we have to share a screen to do that. And we're going to get there. But we appreciate everyone's patience and the public's patience as well. So all we need is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Motion Wilson Jr., support Peterson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I agree. And the meeting is adjourned at 8:04. And is it adios, Heather? That's what her daughter was teaching me. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. And we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
See ya.
All right.
All right.
Night.